Good evening and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Here's a look at what's coming up. Manhattan Judge Juan Merchan calling on former attorney Michael Cohen to stop talking about the Trump case and about the former president himself. But the judge denying Trump's request to gag Cohen, who's expected to testify on Monday. And President Biden pressing his case edge against Trump as the former president campaigns straight from the New York courthouse. The latest in the 2024 race as Trump responds to the prospect of being put behind bars. As former President Trump's criminal trial wraps up yet another week, Judge Juan Merchan directing the prosecution's star witness to stop talking about Trump and the case. Meanwhile, that witness, Michael Cohen, is expected to take the stand on Monday. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more.
An uneventful day in former President Trump's Manhattan criminal trial as Day 15 winds down early on Friday. The prosecution called a series of custodial witnesses before ending at 2 p.m. With extra time to spare, the defense called for a gag order against the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen. Trump attorney Todd Blanche argued that Cohen should have the same gag order as Trump for Cohen's repeated social media attacks. Judge Juan Merchan didn't grant the request. Trump railed against the judge.
There is no gag order to Michael Cohen. What the judge did was amazing, actually. It was amazing. Everybody can say whatever they want. They can say whatever they want, but I'm not allowed to say anything about anybody. It's a disgrace, and you see it. The media sees it.
The judge did instruct the prosecution to tell Cohen to stop making public comments about Trump and this case. Cohen previously said he would refrain from attacks on Trump. Defense attorneys said Friday that Cohen posted on TikTok Wednesday night wearing a T-shirt that showed Trump in an orange jumpsuit and behind bars. Meanwhile, in other legal matters, the judge told prosecutors to compel testimony from Alan Weisselberg. Weisselberg is Trump's former CFO, currently serving time in prison for perjury. He played a leading role in directing employees to reimburse Cohen. The prosecution argued that it's too complicated, but Merchan ordered them to try, despite the defense's objections. On Monday, Cohen is expected to take the stand. Cohen made the $130,000 payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels, who claimed she had an affair with Trump in 2006, which he denies. Prosecutors said today it's entirely possible they will rest their case by the end of next week. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
President Biden courting some of his wealthiest donors as Trump seeks to reach voters directly from the courthouse. That's as Biden's new warning to Israel is sparking division within his own party. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
And President Biden is meeting with wealthy donors on the West Coast as he's seeking to expand his already significant cash edge over former President Trump. Meanwhile, Trump, though again complaining about not being able to be on the campaign trail, today was using his court appearance to talk to voters about the economy and more.
And if I didn't win, you would have a crash like 1929. Mark my words, I've been right about everything.
Trump is also trying to further motivate his base by inciting what he calls political persecution against him. Today he said this about the possibility of getting jailed for violating gag orders. Watch.
That could happen one day, and I'd be very proud to go to jail for our Constitution.
And Trump is also vowing to win the traditionally blue state of New Jersey as he's holding a massive rally there tomorrow. And Biden's campaign, meanwhile, responded to it saying this.
Trump's team is talking about New Jersey. They're talking about holding concerts in Madison Square Garden. I think here on planet Earth in the Biden campaign, we're going to remain laser focused on the pathway to 270 electoral votes.
All this is as fallout continues over Biden's new warning to Israel against going into Rafah. Over 24 Democrats on Friday wrote to the administration warning that withholding weapons to Israel could, quote, embolden Hamas terrorists. That's despite the White House on Friday reiterating this.
We've never told them they can't operate in Rafah. What we've told them is that the way they do it matters.
And President Biden is now facing pressure from Democrats on both sides of this conflict as he first strongly condemned anti-Semitism and then announced pausing bomb shipment to Israel, both in the past week. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
President Biden has proposed bringing Palestinians in Gaza to the United States as refugees. Joining me now to discuss the implications of that plan and the current pro-Palestinian protests is Eric Hovde, Republican candidate for the United States Senate in Wisconsin. Eric Hovde, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great being here today.
It's great to have you in studio. Eric, I want to get your thoughts on these pro-Palestinian protests. They're taking place throughout college campuses. There was a specific instance in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin police confirming chants of Hail Hitler being directed at Jewish students. We hear a lot that these are very peaceful, but yet anti-Semitic comments being hurled at students.
It's blatant anti-Semitism, racism, but really when you look at these protests, it's not just anti-Israel, it's anti-West, it's anti-America. I was riding my bike through the university last Saturday, and where the protesters were, and they love, for some reason, scribbling on the ground with their chalk on the sidewalks. And a lot of them were like, damn America, burn America. I mean, so it's very anti-West, anti-America. It's disgusting. The university should never allow it. And you know, it shows the double standards of the university. If a conservative speaker would come into the university, fortunately it's gotten better, but 5 years ago, they could be shouted down for just coming and talking about their conservative views. And yet, we're allowing this to happen, and this is happening on college campuses all over this country.
You've actually, excuse me, expressed concern over Senator Baldwin in your state wanting to bring in Palestinians from Gaza. Some on the left might say that this is, hate speech and so on and so forth. What are your concerns?
The most radicalized population probably in the world is the Palestinians. The countries of Egypt, Saudi, Jordan, they don't want to take this population. There's no way to properly vet these people. If you saw after the Hamas's attack on Israel, their chants of, celebrating not only that attack, but listen to what they were saying. I mean, it was, again, not just anti-Israel, but anti-America. So we're talking about bringing these people into our country. You can't properly vet them, the security risk that it would create, the cost burden that gets placed on Americans, and then if they are determined to be a refugee, within 5 years they become a U.S. citizen. Once they become that, then they can start bringing family members. And then once their family members get over, they become citizens, and then they bring more of their family members. So it is something that is totally unacceptable. I don't think most of the people in the state of Wisconsin want to pick up the tab to bring people that you can't properly vet, that could be a security risk to our country, and all of a sudden build this large population of Palestinians in our own state.
Wisconsin candidate for United States Senate, Eric Hovde, thank you so much for joining.
It's great being on your show.
And coming up, Arizona is leading the nation with the most illegal border crossings on record this fiscal year. A House committee is examining the impact on local communities. And an Arizona sheriff shares with us his take on the border crisis, what he says needs to be done to halt illegal immigration. That and more when we return. And welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. Communities in Arizona have been seeing what may be the worst of the record surge in illegal immigration. Members of the House Judiciary Committee traveling to a border town in Arizona to examine that impact. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
Members of the House Judiciary Committee are in Sahuarita, Arizona today, taking a close look during a field hearing at how the border crisis is impacting communities that are hard hit down there. 4 witnesses testified before members of Congress, including a retired chief Border Patrol agent and a mother whose child died from fentanyl.
But what we're experiencing now, it's something that we have never seen before. The numbers, the amount, the consequences of it.
But this virtual flood of pills, both into and through Arizona, which has dramatically worsened under the current administration, allowed my boys to make choices they may not have without the current open border crisis.
The Border Patrol has encountered more illegal immigrants in Arizona than any other state this fiscal year, about 370,000. On Thursday, the Biden administration proposed a new immigration rule. It would allow authorities to more quickly reject asylum seekers that are linked to terrorism or have committed crimes. The proposal comes amid rising public disapproval of immigration policies under the Biden administration.
And the staunch difference between the previous administration and the current is gut-wrenching and jaw-dropping.
Wall construction was stopped on our ranch by President Biden.
And earlier this week, 14 Democrats sent a letter to President Biden urging him to use any tool at his command, including executive action, to stomp out the border crisis and resolve the subsequent fentanyl trafficking impacting America. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Sheriff Mark Lamb is located in Pinal County, Arizona. He's also running for Arizona's Senate seat. To learn more about the border crisis in his state, we're happy to have him with us to assess. Sheriff Mark Lamb, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on this morning.
Of course, Sheriff, 15 House Democrats from key battleground states, including your state there of Arizona, you have Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, all writing a letter to President Biden urging him to use all tools at his disposal to restore order at the southern border, including taking executive action. Biden saying that he would not necessarily saying one way or the other that he would take that action. Most of these Democrats are facing tough elections in November with the backdrop of illegal immigration. Are there existing laws on the books that you think the president could or should enforce?
Yeah, this is what I've been saying. There's no need for a new bill. There's no need for taxpayers to foot more money. They have all the president has all the authority under Immigration and Naturalization 212F to take care of all these issues. It's the same authority he used to reverse all of the things that were working under the Trump administration. And he brags about undoing 84 executive orders that were working along for the border stuff. So yes, he has the authority. And some of those things would be, look, enforcing Title VIII, allowing Border Patrol to do their job. If you come across this country or the border illegally, you need to be sent back. That's the way it's supposed to be. If you do it a second time, you're actually charged criminally. They also need to be doing the Remain in Mexico program, which means that you're not going to be able to claim asylum and wait in America until 2030 or 2032 before your court date. These are just some things that we've got to implement. And we've got to stop funding the NGOs, these non-governmental organizations. We're sending all this money and they're aiding and abetting in the trafficking of human beings. They're not helping fix the problem. They're actually encouraging the illegal immigration because they're giving people a soft landing when they get here. They're paying for hotels. They're giving them gift cards, cash, plane tickets all over the country. It is a real problem. And the UN has been a big problem with that, too. They're taking our tax dollars that we've sent over internationally to the UN, and they're using those tax dollars to actually bring in immigration into this country. So that would be a big thing that I would ask for. And hopefully when President Trump comes in, he stops those funding for those NGOs.
Sheriff, I think this is a very important point that you're making. A lot of time, and I don't want to brush over it because a lot of times we, just focus on the cartels profiting off of this border crisis. But you're saying the United Nations and NGOs that are affiliated with them could be profiting and exacerbating the border crisis as well.
Yeah, look, this is one of the reasons I thought the border bill, which wasn't a border bill, it was a global assistance bill, that what they call a bipartisan global bill was a terrible bill. One of the things in there was $2.3 billion of our tax dollars going to NGOs within this country for border stuff. There was also another $9 billion that was going to go internationally through the State Department for global assistance, which most of that was going to go to the UN. I did a video a few months ago where I talked about how when these folks come across, these NGOs are giving them plane tickets, phones, and even gift cards. Well, the media tried to debunk me and say I was giving out false information. I just saw the Epoch Times is confirming it again, but a few months ago, the UN acknowledged that they had given over $1.6 billion to 248 NGOs in the way of gift cards and cash for people coming into this country illegally. So that is probably one of the biggest problems that goes overlooked. And these NGOs have a lot of power within their government, or lobbyists or whoever they are. They're making tens of millions, if not over $100 million.
Sheriff, you're obviously running for Senate in your state of Arizona. Your challenger, if you will, or competitor is Kari Lake, another very big personality in that state. What is it that you think will separate you from her? And ultimately, why are you running? Is it because of the border?
Look, we're both pretty passionate about this state and about this country, but there's really a big difference. And the big difference is a vast amount of experience that I bring to the table. I've been an elected official for 2 terms. I'm the only one who's beaten the Democrats. I've also spent the last 8 years fighting this border crisis. I know it intimately. Not only am I the most qualified candidate in the state of Arizona as it comes to the border and knowledgeable, I would be the most knowledgeable and qualified senator in the Senate once I get to the Senate.
Sheriff Mark Lamb, candidate for United States Senate in the state of Arizona. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Some Americans have been pushing back against what they're calling a woke agenda and boycotting companies that promote it. A new book says it has an action plan for people of faith and reason. Joining me now is Jay Richards, co-author of Fight the Good Fight. Jay Richards, thank you so much for joining.
Great to be with you.
Jay, you have an excellent new book out. It's called Fight the Good Fight, and it talks about this woke agenda and actually how to fight against it. If you could first sort of define what this woke is, because a lot of people don't really know, and then more importantly, how do you fight it?
So think of the wokeocracy as essentially leftism gone to seed. So if you were thinking that leftism was the sort of standard communism we were fighting in the 20th century, that's not what's actually happening. People call it cultural Marxism, but really just think about it as explaining all of society in terms of a conflict between an oppressor and oppressed. So it might be the workers or the owners, men, women, gay, straight, whatever. All the woke agenda actually just applies that really simplistic analysis to culture. And the purpose of it is not to sort of develop a new philosophy for life. It's a cultural wrecking ball to destroy the present order. And then, the woke advocates hope for some utopia in their minds. That's what we're dealing with now. And I think that's a different scenario than the traditional left-right politics that we had in the 20th century.
Jay, there's been a lot of parents that have actually been at the front lines of this battle, many of them now being labeled as domestic terrorists. Yeah. And so, fighting the bureaucracy can be daunting. What advice would you give to these parents?
Well, the first thing is to actually understand what's happening. And you mentioned the bureaucracy. I mean, people talk about the deep state, but really what we're talking about is an administrative state. It's all a part of the executive branch, but it's all those agencies, the names of which you can't remember, doing the sort of things you'd expect legislators to do. So Congress now, they'll write vague laws, and then the agencies might write hundreds of complicated rules that run for hundreds of pages interpreting the laws. This is the process by which the Biden administration has redefined Title IX, which is about sex discrimination, so that sex, under this new rule, can mean gender identity, which of course is a complete destruction of biological sex.
So Jay, this woke agenda, it's actually quite broad in scope, from social and racial division, anti-police, rewriting history, indoctrinating children. This is what I want to ask you about, and really putting a kind of a wedge between children and parents. Where is this all rooted? Is it Marxist? Is it communist?
I would say it's a mix of classical Marxism, but whereas Marx thought just purely in economic categories, the cultural Marxists say, well, actually other dynamics are involved. So obviously the relation between men and women, that's not simply an economic relation, but it's all about dividing the culture, and then once you divide and destroy, you can sort of replace it. That's the idea. So what's the most fundamental bond for civilization? Well, it's the bond of mother and father and the parents to their children. And so, of course, the woke agenda is going to ultimately come between parents and their children. I also think that's where they got out over their skis and have created opponents that maybe weren't even paying attention until recently.
Jay, lastly, how do you think that this woke agenda will factor into this year's election?
Well, it should factor big time. And so I mentioned the Title IX rewrite under the Biden administration. I'll just say, as if I were a political consultant advising the Republicans, I would say, look, you need to make sure that every voter understands that this administration is doing everything it can essentially to just blow up private spaces in sports for women. That's exactly what they're doing. And if they don't make that point, it's going to be their own faults if they lose.
Jay Richards' excellent new book, Fight the Good Fight. Thank you so much for joining.
Great to be with you.
And in New York City today, thousands of Falun Gong practitioners making their way to New York City to celebrate World Falun Dafa Day. The march kicked off near the UN headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, and it wrapped up in front of the Chinese consulate.
What Falun Dafa does is it's a revival of this belief, this idea that through spiritual cultivation, man can really elevate himself to the level of the divine. With people practicing truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, really improving themselves from the inner self, I think it can do a lot to really bring back the social harmony and the societal values that we used to have.
We're glad that the city is supporting the Chinese people and Falun Dafa. It's a beautiful practice, and we're happy that they're celebrating it.
I'm happy for these people, and I'm happy that I had the chance to see it.
Today's parade featured a marching band, dragon dances, and a variety of displays and banners. May 13th of this year will mark the 32nd anniversary of the public introduction of Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong. Mr. Li is a 4-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee, and he's also the recipient of Freedom House's International Religious Freedom Award. Besides celebrating this special occasion, Falun Gong practitioners are raising awareness of a nationwide persecution still taking place in China. In July 1999, the Chinese Communist Party launched a campaign of persecution against the group. Millions of practitioners have been imprisoned and tortured. The United States Department of State cites reports that some practitioners have been victims of state-sponsored forced live organ harvesting to supply the regime's transplant market in China. Falun Gong is a traditional Chinese spiritual practice based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Since its public introduction in 1992, the practice quickly gained popularity for its health benefits as well as its moral teachings. Today, Falun Gong is practiced by people in over 110 countries around the world. And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com and download our NTD mobile app. That is all we have for you this evening on the Capitol Report. Thank you for watching. From the nation's capital, I'm Steve Lance. Have a great weekend. See you back here Monday.